Notice, in accordance with the new copyright regulations, this episode of Quoth the Raven is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content we sometimes feature is kid-friendly, the context of the episode is to address adults and inform them of said content for them to research and as consumers in service of their youth. In other words, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. There is the possibility of adult language present on the episode as well. Rated TV 16 and up. Welcome. Once again, to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Lewis Bright Raven, 29-year veteran of science fiction, fantasy, horror, comics, and role-playing games as a writer, illustrator, and editor. And it is Tuesday, June 22nd. Usually we do our shows on Monday, but in kind of a crazy weekend, I just didn't have everything set up yesterday, so we're doing it today. So this is our weekly comics reviews. All the books we are reviewing today are books I got last week, or maybe in one case a little bit earlier. But we'll just go ahead and get into those. But first, I have to go into our questions for the week. Our first question of the week is, how come you don't do more episodes about comic strips and political cartooning scene like you did for Roundtable last week? This is from Anonymous. And that's a good question. Mostly unfamiliarity with it, I guess. I have to have the right awareness of people, and also, like last week, I invited a lot of people to come on the roundtable, and they just didn't respond. So it's hard for me to talk about comic strips or political cartooning if the people that are really more knowledgeable about it than me aren't willing to come on to the show. So that's mainly the reason why I haven't done it. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try to expand and bring that stuff to the podcast on a more consistent basis in the future. Our next question. Multiple parties. When are you going to cover more crowdfunding stuff? Presuming they want to know, what do I see on the crowdfunding market that interests me, or something like that, I guess is what people are asking for. And that'll be on Thursday this week. In lieu of Roundtable, we're going to talk about crowdfunding, and we'll see if some of the regular viewers on the show decide to contribute some information on that this week or not, but we'll see. But that'll be what Thursday's show is about. Our next question, also from multiple parties. Can we get more live draw episodes out of you, only shorter, like maybe only 15 to 20 minutes? Multiple parties have asked this. I'm not sure what people want in 15 or 20 minutes. I don't draw that fast. I guess they're looking for me to do, like, when I do speed sketches or something like that at a show or something. I guess they want to see that. But so maybe. We'll see. Either that, or maybe if I can figure out how to get a decent enough recording that I'm happy with and can edit and maybe, speed it up so that it's like what some of the other guys do, where you see a pre-recorded drawing type thing. But someday. Yeah. And another question, will you ever do live draw challenges with other artists on your show? That depends on other people, basically. I've invited Dwayne Biddix, I've invited Michael Pennick, I've invited Steve Stegwin. Steve and I are probably going to set up something, hopefully next month. But yeah, it's about having people willing to come on the show and do things. And that's a good point of reminding you guys, I really need you to like and share and subscribe to the channel, because I think part of the reason why a lot of people flake out on me or don't respond to me is because they say I got 43 subscribers. They see I only got so many views per show, and they're thinking it's not worth my time. So, I really need you guys to start getting other people to come watch the show and subscribe to the show if possible, so that people will actually come on the show and I can give better quality content. Mm-hmm. Pop Culture Avenger asks, how am I feeling? Feeling all right. Basically, about Friday night, Saturday morning, around 4:30 in the morning is when I got hit with the virus, and it kind of knocked me out for the weekend. That's all. As far as, really being able to do an extended period of time, I would go through waves of body chills and not feeling very good. And then I, kind of break fever and sweat for about 2 hours, and I'd be okay again for about 3 hours, and then it would start over again. And this went on for about 36 hours straight. So it was just like, I was just I was not able to do a podcast for an extended period of time for live draw or anything like that. That's all. And speaking of which, pop culture for Thursday, send me a list of what you see on crowdfunding that you think I should be paying attention to. I'll take a look at it and talk about it on Thursday. Have you thought about trying down other channels? Yeah, I've tried. I'm not name enough. I mean, if you pay attention, I've been trying to get Aaron and Krusty to let me come on the show multiple times, and he's like, nope, not gonna do it. So I'm like, okay. I've tried other people as well, so it's the way it is. I think it might be different if I had current books maybe ready to show, maybe, but who knows. I have been on Ted Davies' channel a couple times, so and that is our questions and answers for this episode. So if you do have questions for me, Quoth the Raven LBR 72 at gmail.com, subject QTR Q&A. So let's go ahead and get into the reviews for this week. And we'll start with back issue number 127 for $9.95. Publishers Tomorrow's Publishing. Various writers. This is a news historical review interview magazine. Artists featured include Brian Boland on the cover, Daniel Brereton, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, which is the bottom right corner, two figures. They do an article on Cinder and Ash, and that was a book he drew. There's Joe Kubert, of course, Billy Tukey, and others. And it was released on June 16th. And what's about it? It's a historical overview of Sergeant Rock, War as Hell, Cinder and Ash, Beetle Bailey, and other war comics and comic strips, with interviews with writers and artists who worked on these projects and defined the era of war comics throughout the 50s to the 1980s in their popularity, as well as attempted revisitations and reboots in more modern times. And there's also an article on the toys that Sergeant Rock inspired. I learned that Chris Claremont wrote War as Hell for Marvel, which means I have to go try and look those up and get copies of those, because I did not know he worked on that. That was an interesting anecdote there and information. I mostly got this issue for the Boland cover and because I wanted to read the Cinder and Ash article. Again, I didn't know about the Claremont stuff, so that was interesting to read about. Unfortunately, the Cinder and Ash article was slightly disappointing, as it talked more about the politics and play in the industry at the time, rather than whether or not the interviewee on the article, Jerry Conway, the writer, would share his intent after the miniseries had concluded. If there had been more stories to be told, I would have liked to have seen more, because I really did like that particular miniseries back in the day. It is recommended for ages 13 up, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars, this particular issue. Our next book is Black Star Original Graphic Novel Hardcover Edition, $24.99, by Abram Comics Arts Megascope as the publisher, written by Anthony Glover, and artist is Ariel Jovellanos, or Jovellanos. I'm not sure how she pronounces her last name. The genre is science fiction. Release date was May 11th, 2021. I got it like maybe 2 weeks ago because they had a delay from at my store receiving it. What it's about? Well, it's a debut graphic novel by Eric Anthony Glover based on his original unproduced screenplay, illustrated by Ariel Jovellanos. In the future, interstellar travel is past its prime, and sending shuttles or any type of spaceship beyond our solar system, even for vital scientific research, is something of a life-threatening gamble. However, in order to retrieve samples of an alien flower that may hold the key to saving countless lives, Harper North and her crew of scientists must journey to Helios, a dangerous planet deep in space. But as they approach Helios, their ship is caught in an asteroid storm, which I never really quite liked the idea of calling it an asteroid storm, but that's what they say it is, as it hurtles towards the surface. Oh, and as it hurtles towards the surface for me, its reserve shuttle detaches and lands about 100 kilometers away from where their crash site is. When the rest of the crew has perished in the burning wreckage of the ship, Harper races towards the rescue shuttle built for one, hoping to fulfill their mission and survive. But Harper North isn't alone. The team's wilderness expert is still alive and hellbent on hunting North down and claiming the shuttle for herself. Now, North has no choice but to reach the shuttle first and fast. The fuel is leaking, her GPS battery is dying, and the planet's deadly seasonal change is coming. As she battles the flora and fauna and tries to elude her ruthless former crewmate, well, it's just former teammate, not crewmate, I guess, in a way, but either way, North will find that the cost of survival is high, but will she be willing to pay that price? My thought is that it's very surprised that this has never been picked up and produced as a screenplay. The story is solid. There are things I could nitpick if I had time to do it. There are some plot logic holes in the story. At least as far as being produced as a comic, it's there. I don't know. I haven't seen the actual screenplay and what might have been left out or whatever. The comic is a quick read. There's a lot of really good to great visual storytelling without a lot of dialogue. It's very visually driven. The two women characters are multidimensional, and you can empathize with both of them in different ways, despite the behavior that they exhibit towards each other. The wildlife expert's something of a biatch, but then again, are they? They're trying to survive, so it's kind of a, you can either choose to be Harper's, to be on the side of Harper, or you can kind of choose to see the perspectives of both characters. It's done well enough that there's no real bad guy per se. So it's just a really well done story overall. I think that Ariel Jovellanos will become a name to be reckoned with in comics in the future. She may not be a slick, popular artist in terms of her art style, but she does have nuance and a strong camera eye. If she continues to improve on her storytelling, she will become undeniably good in her style, while maybe not mainstream enough right now. There's going to be publishers who are not going to be able to turn away this artist blindly just out of their typical behaviors that they tend to do towards women artists or towards certain styles of art in the field. I recommend this story for ages 13 and up. I give it 4.5 stars. Let's take a look at some of the artwork. Again, it's kind of cartoony. There's a few things like, the foreshortening on the arm there is a little bit off, for the angle and stuff, but it's interesting. And again, there's no story. It's all visual here. As you can see, there's no dialogue or anything going on. Let you guys. She's basically talking to the computer thing, to the person that they're against there. Very well done. Again, the publisher is Abrams. Megascope. Abrams Comics Megascope. It's a book publisher, so Abrams Books. Abrams Comic Arts Megascope. There you go. Okay. Our next book is Grendel Devil's Odyssey, number 7 of 8. It's for $3.99. Publisher is Dark Horse. Writer, illustrator Matt Wagner, with colors by Brennan Wagner. Cover art by Matt Wagner. Genre science fiction, fantasy, action, adventure. Released June 16th. Grendel Prime's crusade is the White Warrior becomes legendary on the planet known as Bohan Fek, but his campaign of nonviolent resistance to overturn and eradicate the presence known as the Ordeal eventually brings him into conflict with the leader of that world's greatest caste, a ruthless despot known as Gama Gorak, or Gorach. My thoughts is, okay, now this was sort of unexpected. This whole issue is a metaphor for the Trump presidency and what would happen if someone had attempted to remove him from the office by force, even if totally justified in said actions. That was not something I was expecting at all. And since it's come out so late due to COVID, it was delayed. Had it come out during the Trump presidency, it would have been probably a little more okay, I get it. But, so many months after him being out of office now, it's like I feel like it's passe a little bit. I don't know. But anyway, Wagner does an exceptional job with it. But given the events of the story and that there's only one issue left, it did make me wonder what his end game is and what he's going to do to wrap the series up next issue. But whatever he does, it should be interesting. Recommended for mature readers, 17 and up. Rating 4 out of 5 stars. And here's some of the art. This is his Trump analogy guy. He's got Grendel Prime wrapped up, and he's not fighting anybody. He's just chained up and everything, because obviously, the Trump analogy can't really actually do anything. So he's like, oh yes, I'm hitting him with my sword, and see, he's not even fighting back. He's very low energy. I've already defeated him, and he's not even trying, type thing. And of course, Gamma, is always, it's Wagner's switching it over from MAGA, Make America Great Again, to, Gamma for, letter inversion there. But he says, less than an hour ago, those people that are in the stands that are cheering him on were actually raising their open hands to me and supporting me. What is this? I don't get it, and of course his robot sidekick is, this is the nature, such is the nature of a mercurial nature of a mob, which, okay, he's saying basically everybody who was Trumpians or mobs mentality. Okay, fine, whatever. But just, all the way through here. The speaker for Grendel, they bring him out and say that was the real white warrior. And since he can't do anything, he's calling, Grendel a con artist. And, just little things in there that are just, it's such a heavy Trump analogy. But, okay, whatevs. And he kills Grendel's speaker. And this is like, okay, now, since Gamma executed Naz, and that means Grendel's promise to Naz of not getting harmed is obviously not true. He basically loses his cool and says, okay, I'm done with you, and wipes him out. And the sidekick, Robot Head, there is trying to tell him, no, you can't do it. You can't fight him, because if you do, all this message of non-fighting and peace and everything will be destroyed, and your reputation will be gone. But, whether it's out of his anger or whatever, he wipes him out and gets rid of him. And of course, because he does execute Gamma Gorak, or Gorach, the mob now goes after him, and he has to wipe out a bunch of people and massacre them, basically, which was what he didn't want to have to do to begin with. He'd been avoiding this for months in the comic. And in that respect, it's very interesting, because it's a good analogy explaining that no matter what you do, you can't do violence, but at the same time, yeah. It was pretty cool designs. Art's excellent in it. I think the main problem for me is, as well as it's done, like I said, I've been more powerful had it come out on time. But now that Trump's out of the equation, it's not that the message doesn't still hold weight, because it does. We still have an issue in society about different mentalities and different ideologies and stuff like that. But it's kind of like this weird balance, because yes, you want to express tolerance and acceptance and peace and nonviolence, but there is a time for the sword as well. and that happened to be his moment. That was time for the sword. So even though it kind of undermined his initial intent, so yeah, it is what it is. Pop Culture asks, do you have earlier Grendel series by Kimiko? No, I don't. I didn't get introduced to Grendel until he was with Dark Horse. So I got the Image reprints of the Kimiko era instead. And Mark Andrew Smith says Grendel's been out forever. Yeah, it's been out. Oh, geez. What was it? 85, I think is when it first came out. Well, I think the reason Grendel has never been a film is because which Grendel do you want to go with? Because there's different Grendels. You've got oh geez, I can't even think of the Hunter Rose Grendel. His story is one thing. Christine Spars is another. This is Grendel Prime's stuff, which Grendel Prime has different types of Grendel stories as well. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's never been made into a movie. But I could see it these days. I mean, it's surprising that Netflix or Amazon or somebody hasn't asked to license it as a television anthology series, Grendel Tales, which they did as a comic as well. But, I could see a Grendel Tales storyline, animated series or something like that these days. And I could see with all the different networks we have, someone picking that up. Maybe it will happen someday. I don't know about that. I don't think it's as much a reboot as a story or stories finish, and then he goes on to a different era of the character. I think more than anything else, but I don't think that's the same as a reboot per se. Our next book. Oh, Pop Culture said it was 82. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that tells you, I mean, I was like 10. I wasn't even reading I was reading comics, but I wasn't reading indies at that point. I was kind of like phasing. I was at that stage where I was like phasing out of Marvel DC mainstream and saying I'm too old for comics now at 10 years old. And it'd be another 3 years before someone convinced me to come back to comics. So anyway, our next book is Midnight Sky, number 8, $3.99. This is the last issue of the story arc. Publisher is Scout Comics. Writer is James Pruitt. Artist is Scott Van Donnellan, with colors by Ayaria Fella. Genre science fiction. It was released June 16th. And what it's about, Jennifer and Alita fight for their lives against a horde of swamp creatures that are trying to prevent them from rescuing Alejandro from the changelings, aliens. Meanwhile, Alejandro finds himself face to face with the prime changeling and discovers that he shares more than just a species, as it is revealed that the prime is his true biological father. Now Alejandro is faced with the most important decision of his life, whether loyalty to his true bloodline and heritage is more powerful than the love of his human mother and family, with the fate of Earth at stake. This is the variant cover based off of Logan's Run idea. There was a lot. He did a lot of those type of covers that were reminiscent analogies to popular science fiction movies. My biggest problem with this series was that it had so many extended delays in between issues. Now, part of that was because of COVID, and part of it was other reasons. The last issue came out back in February 3rd. So it took over, what is that? March, April, May, June. That's over 4 months between issues. That's just too long, especially when it was just next to the last issue. And it kills all the momentum and interest for the book. And there was other delays like that in between issues earlier in the series as well. And I think that's, when you're waiting months on end for the next issue, it just hurts the book. This is the last issue of the story arc and technically of the series. I'm not sure if and when the series will continue with Scout or somebody else, but as with Resonant, which I'll explain in a little bit, it is a good place for me to stop reading the series. This is kind of my point. I attempted to get writer James Pruitt on the podcast on more than one occasion to talk about this series and other stuff he's done. We just never could sync up schedules and get him on the show, unfortunately. It is recommended for ages 13 up. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Here's Alita. For those of you who don't remember, she's got a kind of like a mutation power where she can take human blood or the blood of the aliens and control it and weaponize the blood, more or less. And she's taking on Alejandro's alien father, and he's wearing a protective suit. If he didn't have a protective suit, she would be basically ripping him to shreds with this physical, like blood blades or whatever. Alejandro says, hey, I didn't really know what the situation was. And he goes, he finally figures out what he can do to stop this whole fight, because everybody else is dying from her using the blood, because it's basically taking blood out of all of them as tow. And he runs towards the portal, and he shoves his father through the portal to the aliens world, and it explodes the portal. And they figure it's maybe that they've won the battle. They don't know what happened to Alejandro, and here he is, only it's not him. It's the real Alejandro, who was human, that was over in the other dimensional planet, who is now on Earth, while their Alejandro, as far as they know, is dead, but he's not really dead. What happens is all the characters that we have seen killed by the aliens have actually just, it's kind of like they all make duplicates of that person, and the real person's over on the other world that's dying. And we see him, we have a cut back at the end where Alejandro is on the other planet, and he meets one of the other people we knew that we thought was killed earlier in the series, and the two of them are walking off trying to find shelter or whatever in the other alien dimension, and that's where they leave it off for the series. So whether or not they're going to continue it or not, who knows? But it was okay. It's just a situation where I'm kind of getting, I'm just done with it pretty much. Our next book is Norse Mythology, book 2, number 1, $3.99. Publishers Dark Horse. Writers are Neil Gaiman and P. Craig Russell, with art by P. Craig Russell and Matt Horak. Genres mythology fantasy, released June 16th. This is the continuation of the adaptation of the works of Norse mythology that Gaiman wrote in prose, and this is adapted from comics from that prose book. And this is the second miniseries. And this is a story of Kvasir, made of joining Aesir and Vanir. Those are two different types of godlings, I guess. And he's the poet of the Asgardians, who comes to Midgard, gets murdered by giants, and his blood gets passed around Midgard as wine, and basically tells about how poetry came to exist in our world. My thoughts is it's the usual coolness for people who don't really have interest in Norse mythology or just didn't care for Gaiman's adaptation prose wise. And I've read several book reviewers who just couldn't get into it for some reason. Maybe they would try this version instead and like it better. I don't know. But it's for ages 13 up. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. This is the other alternate cover, but which I wish I would stop doing because it makes things confusing. And I wish that they would make some notification with the cover logo that this is season or miniseries 2, because I'm fairly certain that retailers and fans alike are going to wind up confused with a new #1 issue and no discernible means of knowing where to put it in collectible continuity with the previous miniseries. So I do have some issues with the trade dress on that. But again, the story adaptation is, as per usual with this series, excellent. Recommended for ages 13 and up. And I give it 4 out of 5 stars. And here's some of the interior artwork. This is where Kvasir is created out of the spittle of the gods. And, weird things that they make them out of, right? But he has basically all the memories of all the gods and knowledge of the gods and does different things. And because he's that knowledgeable, he has a lot of a lot of wisdom, and the gods tend to favor him even necessarily over Odin. And as a result, he's like, no, maybe I'm gonna leave Asgard, and because I don't want to have jealousy from Odin or anything like that. So he goes down to Earth off the Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost, and he meets, dark elves who, they talk him into coming to talk to them and stuff, and they murder him and drain him of his blood, and then make mead out of it. Again, very well drawn. Told story. Our next book is Resonant #10 for $3.99. Vault Comics is the publisher. Writer is David Andry. Artist is Skylar Patridge, with colors by Jason Wordy. Post-apocalyptic SF, released June 16th. Recommended for ages 17 and up, rather. 4 out of 5 stars. Well, it's about Paxton, the father of the family, finally gets his act together and attempts to escape the spiral, desperate to get back to his children, but his friend and recent lover in the series, Claire, stands in his way. Meanwhile, Beck, his daughter, in the clutches of Preacher, discovers that her fight to take back the cabin has become a struggle for her entire family's survival. My thoughts is it's a good closure issue for all the story arc points. It's a good, everything's really well done. It just happens to be the perfect place for me to step off and walk away from the series after 10 issues. It's not a bad series by any means. Again, it's one of those books that they had delays between issues. Sometimes the story was dragging a little bit on top of it, and I lost interest. And that just happens from time to time with different books. So, now that they finally finished the story arc, it's a good place for me to stop. And if they decide to continue, maybe I'll wait and get them in trades or something. But here's the artwork. And this is Beck. in the hands of Preacher, and she sprays him with insecticide, and he was not impressed with that, initially. And she's like, yeah, that wasn't the point. It's also alcohol. So here, get torched. And she basically kills him off. And then they end up losing the house anyway in the story, but the family still survives, so that's what matters, more so than their cabin. Next book is Stake number 4 for $3.99. Scout Comics, again, is the publisher. Writer is David A. Byrne. Artist is Francesca Fantini. Letterer Joel Rodriguez. Genre horror, released June 16th. Mature readers 17 and up. Rating 3 out of 5 stars. Our character, lead character Angel, gets some new technology. Basically, she gets some contact lenses that can record video and stuff like that. She was wearing sunglasses. Unfortunately, there were certain other things that they couldn't change, but no big deal. But even more so, she gets a break from the case. There's a new lead in her quest to track down Ashwin and his goon squad. That's the vampire cult group that are potentially killing people. But will this lead pan out? Meanwhile, another murder that appears to be connected to the case they're working on happens and lands at Angel and her partner Jessamine's feet. And Barnard, who was the sexual RuPaul type, not RuPaul analogy in the earlier issue, summons Angel to his nightclub for a much needed night out. My issue is this, or my thoughts is this is a filler issue on so many different levels. It sure would be nice if comic readers would learn that 3 2-page sequences for 6 pages of story in a comic does not need to be spread out to make a full issue. Just get to the point. It just irks me in that regard. There's just a lot of stuff that really wasn't necessary. Just wow. I'm not going to show the artwork on that one because a lot of it is just too much nudity and other stuff that I just wasn't too keen on. So our next book is Usagi Yojimbo number 20, $3.99. Writer IW Publishing. Writer-artist Stan Sakai with colors by Hi-Fi Design. The genre is anthropomorphic samurai adventure, released June 16th. And what it's about is Yukichi Part 1 is the title of the story, and it features the introduction of new recurring character, that is Yukichi, as Usagi encounters a young sword master carrying out the dying wish of his master. He's trying to deliver Itsuki Sensei's swords to his nephew Daido, who will take over his sensei's school. However, the two of them must pass through the territory of a rival school intent on taking and possessing that heirloom. My thoughts is it's Sakai, it's Usagi. What more needs to be said? Get a copy today. Seriously, that's, it is the best book on the market. Recommended for ages 10 and up, 5 stars. Here's some of the storyline. Yukichi catches up with Usagi, and he tells of the story when Usagi came to to his dojo to talk to his master, and he didn't respect him properly. And Usagi shows his credentials. And basically, he was like, "What are your credentials?" And he doesn't have papers because of how Usagi got trained. So he gives an example of his swordsmanship by cutting the twig off the tree. And he's not impressed with it. The kid isn't impressed. So he never shows his master the cut twig and his master discovers it like 6 or 7 hours later. And he's like, "You fool, why didn't you bring this to me?" And so he sends his Yukichi after him, but of course, it's too late. He'd already left, and so he never got the chance to get Usagi to meet his sensei. And he became the head instructor for the school, but he always carried that one regret. And he keeps the twig, which is kind of cool. So, unfortunately, again, his master has died, so now, he can't visit them and stuff, but it's kind of a cool storyline. I really do like the expressions of the characters and the faces, the youthfulness of Yukichi in different things, and as he looks older, you can see the difference. And I also love this one panel here where Usagi's like, "Oh my gosh, you actually kept the twig." It's like, holy shit. So cool stuff there, as always. And that is pretty much our reviews for the week. Now, tomorrow, Wednesday, I will be back with our What Did You Get Wednesday. Thursday, I will be doing crowdfunding discussion. Friday this week will be off. I'm behind on schedule on some stuff. I owe some people some artwork. Like way behind on some certain things I'd totally forgotten I owed some people. And so I will have to take Friday off this week. And then I'll be back on Saturday for a live draw. So that's what's going on this week. So, in lieu of tomorrow, if you guys want to reach me, Facebook, Lewis.BrightRaven, Twitter, at LewisBrightRaven2, DeviantArt.com/BrightRavens, where you can see some of my art. You're watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven on YouTube, also on Facebook via YouTube, or StreamYard and YouTube. If you have questions, reach out to me at QuothTheRavenLBR72@gmail.com. And if I don't answer you at that address, try LewisBrightRaven@yahoo.com. Again, regularly, this show airs on Mondays. And then Wednesdays, you get What Did You Get This Week in the Mail. Thursdays is just roundtable talk. I will try to have a guest to also talk about different stuff coming out on the crowdfunding scene, but we'll see. And then Friday, so usually is genre right, but I'm going to be skipping this week so I can get caught up in my art assignments. and then live draw for Saturday. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day. You too, pop culture.